All right, let's play one more clip. We'll do another little segment on this, Ben. Back in the terrestrial world of people who actually represent us and care about human lives, this is Bernie Sanders saying, hey, Dr. Fauci, in addition to opening right now being a disaster, in addition to the just stark contrast, obviously, between the millions of people in the workforce who are they're trying to coerce back into it, as well as the essential workers who don't have protections, aren't getting hazard pay, are getting exploited at an even higher rate by companies like Amazon. Hey, we have no public health infrastructure in the United States because there are barely any, and people, God forbid, we should do Medicare for all. That would take care of everyone, like I was campaigning on. Are we missing some information here? Is this crisis even worse than we can even register or measure because of our lack of planning and resources in America's healthcare sector? This is Bernie Sanders and Dr. Fauci.
Dr. Fauci, is that 80,000 Americans have died from the pandemic. There are some epidemiologists who suggest the number may be 50% higher than that. What do you think?
I'm not sure, Senator Sanders, if it's going to be 50% higher, but most of us feel that the number of deaths are likely higher than that number because given the situation, particularly in New York City, when they were really strapped with a very serious challenge to their healthcare system, that there may have been people who died at home who did have COVID, who were not counted as COVID because they never really got to the hospital. So in direct answer to your question, I think you are correct that the number is likely higher. I don't know exactly what percent higher, but almost certainly it's higher.
The official statistic,
Okay, so again, and the fact, Bernie Sanders isn't pulling that out of nowhere. That 50% number it might not be real, it might not be true. We pray it isn't, but that's being told to him by someone with credibility and research in the field. That isn't, this isn't a Republican senator that pulls a thing from Newsmax. Mm-hmm. He's talking to somebody who has some basis medically for suggesting that, and it is possible. And there's a number of anecdotal horror stories, not only in New York but elsewhere, of those types of deaths. And again, we don't have the capacity to fully measure that, let alone fully contract trace it, because we do not have a public health infrastructure in the United States. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I just keep thinking about Spain, where right after all this started, they nationalized all their private hospitals, and thinking, all right, well, I mean, this would be, if not obviously for all the economic interests that are lined up against doing something like that, and the ideological resistance to it that goes along with that, that just seems like it would be, the obvious move that if, like that you could, if Pearl Harbor is just happening, you need to build up the Navy really quickly, right? You would think it would be that kind of thing, right? Just given the scale of the crisis, that you would create something like an NHS, since you just don't want to worry at all under these circumstances about hospitals like maintaining like a profit, or being able to stay economically viable. The state could absorb the hit, and then really and then you would start funding it like the military was funded in World War II, where really like the entire economy was reorganized around the needs of the military, and you'd think this would be the same thing there, on the surface, that it should be, that we could have that we would have this massive buildup, that of that new national health service, and in the future you could fund it the way that the military is funded. That there's like, it's nobody has to actually be attacking you at that moment for you to feel the need to order a bunch of tanks and anti-aircraft guns and everything. So the fact that it's not, I mean, maybe it's a obvious point on some level, but the fact that it's not is just really horrifically revealing, because any kind of policy that was just about, oh wow, how do we scale up to the needs of the crisis as quickly as at all possible, would be doing that. But of course, like everything else we keep talking about, like canceling rent, it's something that they don't want to do because they're worried about setting a precedent.
That's exactly it. All right, Ben Burgess, we appreciate your time as always. Everybody check out Ben's Patreon page. Check out Give Them an Argument. Check out Dead Pundit Society. Stay safe, man.
All right, you too.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.